I had been dealing with an addiction to porn, lust, and sexual sin since I was in the 4th grade. And it was a huge part of my life. On the outside, other people thought I was a great guy, but I was physically abusive to my wife at times. I was verbally abusive to her. I have had multiple affairs. I have not been what God had wanted me to be. I knew all the right answers, but God was not the God of my life. I was the God of my life.
All I wanted growing up was to be a wife and a mom. And so to see my marriage crumble, that was very difficult for me.
I really didn't feel like I was a part of our marriage anymore. I didn't feel like this is where I wanted to even be.
It left me empty. It left me hurting, and there was a lot of resentment.
We served heavily in the church. I was a youth leader. She was a youth leader. She was the youth secretary. So I really felt that I was living quite a bit of a lie. I don't even remember what she said, but it just really set us off. And we had this huge fight. And at that point, I knew I was done. We came back home, and a couple days later, I filed for divorce.
I sat and cried and cried and cried because everything I had worked so hard for was gone. Our life was a mess, and everybody was going to know it. The Lord showed me how wrong I was. I had tried to change him for years, and we never got anywhere with that. I tried to do it on my own, and I knew that I was so wrong. And it was then that I knew this whole journey was more about me getting back to where I should be with the Lord. That's when it all began, because my life changed, because God said, you need to be quiet.
And I could see that this is not the same woman I had been married to for the last 20 years. There was such a difference in her. One, she was quiet. She wasn't trying to change me. She wasn't trying to tell me I needed to change. She wasn't telling me how wrong I was or anything else like this. She was just quiet before God and letting God do the work in my life.
It was very odd for me to be up, because I would go back into my bedroom after Chris would leave the house, and I would scream at the Lord and tell him everything I wanted to tell Chris. And so that was very challenging.
I'm a pretty black and white person, and my whole relationship with God was very gray. You hear people talk about how great God is and how real he is in their lives, and I was like, why aren't you making me like that, Lord? I've known you all my life. Lord, where are you? You said you never leave me or forsake me, and yet I don't feel you at all in my life. Then I get a call from Lori, and she's like, how's it going? I'm like, not good. I said, I just don't feel him at all. And she says the most off-the-wall things. And she says, when I can't hear from God, it's usually because I have unconfessed sin in my life. And here I go. That just really got me angry. She hangs up because she knew she made me mad. And then I'm like, who is she to tell me that I have unconfessed sin in my life? And that's why I can't hear from God. I looked up at God and I said, God, Lori says I can't hear from you because there's unconfessed sin in my life. And if there's unconfessed sin in my life, then you need to show me now. And oh my, the floodgates opened up. All these sins that had just kept coming back into my life, things that I thought I had confessed and things that I thought I'd let go of and everything, and no, it just kept coming and coming and coming for about an hour. I texted Lori and said, I've been broken.
And he told me the time it was. It was the exact time that I had prayed, Lord, I give him up to you. I can't take it anymore. My husband, who had been spewing hateful things to me for days, I saw a glimmer of what my husband could be.
And I knew there was more stuff that I needed to be broken of. And I moved back home. We started putting the pieces back together of our marriage. And I just started confessing to her all of my addiction. Having to eat so much crow and having to apologize for so much stuff. How many times? And she was silent.
During this time of him confessing, it was the most difficult thing I think that I've been through. In the midst of it, I could feel God just surrounding me with his protection, because what would have devastated and been the end of me prior to this, the Lord just came in and said, it's going to be okay.
It was bad. I don't think she ever knew the extent of how deep and how steeped in sin I was with my addiction to porn. They asked a question, how much of your life did you surrender to God? And I'm like, I got this. I figure I've surrendered about 80% of my life to God. And then I'm thinking, no, maybe not so much that. And I'm like, they're thinking, okay, 50-50, God, I'll give you 50-50. I think I surrendered half my life to you. And then he's like, really? And he's like, try 20%, Chris. You want to know why you were never new? You want to know why you never felt me before? Because you only surrendered such a small part of your life. You held on to all of this stuff all of your life. And I'm like, you're right, Lord, I have. He goes, so what's it going to be? You want to surrender this now? You want to get rid of this now? I'm just bawling my eyes out before God, and I'm on my knees. I said, Lord, I confess to you my sin of porn. And this hole in my heart just closed up. And I said, Lord, I confess to you my sin of lust. And it got even smaller. And I said, Lord, I confess my sin of sexual sin to you. And it closed completely. And this burden had just lifted off of my body. And I get up on the couch, and again, I just feel his presence right there with me. And I'm like, you set me free. And he's like, and what I have set free is free indeed. You are so free. And I'm like, I got to tell Lori. It was her day off, so she's sleeping in. She wasn't even up yet. And I go in the bedroom. I got tears running down my face. Lori's like, what's wrong, Chris? And I start singing, Amazing Grace. I've been set free. And she's like, what? I said, God just set me free from a lifelong addiction of porn, something that I felt that I could never, ever, ever be delivered from. And he just turned it free. And man, what a change that has made in my life. Because I know that this realness, this intimacy with God, this thing that was missing all of my life had just been found.
This whole journey I thought was about restoring our marriage, but it was more about restoring our relationship with the Lord individually. And in the process, he restored our marriage.
We have an intimacy now that's just beyond compare, because our marriage is now all about God. It's not about anything else. It's about what God has done in our lives. And it's just been so beautiful to see how he's just continued to change us and how he's just set our lives free.
We actually got remarried on the day we were supposed to be divorced. And I just want to give other women hope, not to hope in their spouse, but to hope in the Lord, because that's where the only peace and satisfaction is.
Thank you for letting us share our story, which is God's story and what he's done in our life.